Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
Well, hello, good evening and a very warm welcome to Newsline Zoom. Zoom, of course, because of the growing concerns related to the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. And everybody ought to be doing their own thing to ensure that they are doing whatever they can to ensure that the spread of the disease is stopped dead in its track. Now then, this evening we're joined on Newsline Zoom by Lihini Fernando, who's of course a municipal council member from Morato and also an attorney at law. Very good evening to you, madam, and welcome to Newsline Zoom.
Faraz, pleasure to be here.
Now then, as an attorney at law, how did you view the recent and well-reported meeting where all sorts of the judges and so on were summoned for a meeting, and there was serious concern? Tell us what that concern was about.
Right. So on the 13th of August, the judges of all courts in Sri Lanka was summoned, was called for a meeting, and they had a meeting via a webinar, Zoom meeting. That was what was reported on the media. And the judges were of the opinion that this meeting was primarily called to discuss the present COVID situation and the challenges that the judiciary is facing in terms of the daily conduct of court. But however, as reported in the media, what we came to understand is that at this meeting, there were certain points that were discussed. If I may read to you out, the issues of trade union protests and the roles of the courts also had come up to discussion. And also the judicial officers had been given instructions on the use of certain sections of the Criminal Procedure Code and on how to control public gatherings on counts of pandemic situation. And also there was a discussion on the perception among judicial officers that there was an effort to impress upon them to give orders and on the police to curb protests. So these were some of the points that were discussed, and from what we understood that there were certain instructions that were given to judges on how the certain sections of the Criminal Procedure Code should be interpreted, and also and their approach when it came to this protest. So by far what we mean is that something that we all lawyers know, and for the effective functioning of a democracy, it is important that these three organs, the executive, the legislature and the judiciary, are independent organs, that these three organs, there are checks and balances between them, and that they function independently, and that no party at any point should intervene the conduct of the judiciary. And no party at any point has the authority to instruct judicial officers, judges on how judgments should be given. If that happens, that is a failing point of a democracy in any country. So then here what we see is the judges being called upon for a meeting, and if they are being told on what to do, it is seriously a concern that we all must be alarmed of, because it is important that in a country that rule of law, the independence of the judiciary and all of it is maintained in order for the true administration of justice. So the SJB has also made a statement in this regard that they are deeply concerned because what we know is that now we know the executive in the country is headed by a Rajapaksa. The legislature is also headed by a Rajapaksa. So we can't expect independence among these two organs. But the judiciary is the utmost, the only body that maintains independence. And people in this country must also have faith in the judicial system. We know that in any event, how a case is administered is by analyzing the evidence and by analyzing the submissions that are made by the lawyers that are representing the litigants, by analyzing the complaints, by analyzing the submissions. That is how a judgment is being given. And if there's a party who is aggrieved by it, has the right to go to court by way of an appeal or by way of a revision. No, by no means should any third party instruct the judges on how the law should be interpreted. It is up to a judge. A judge has the discretionary power in interpreting the law within the four corners of the law. A judge has the right to interpret the law. So now this is really alarming that the present administration, the Rajapaksa administration, are they trying to interfere into the judiciary? Are they trying to dictate judiciary on what and what should happen? So these are concerns I think the general public needs to be aware of, because these are actually what we can say, these are signs of militarization of a country, where they want the judiciary to fall apart. Because in that sense, where do the general public seek for justice? Where do we call for justice? And how can we expect a true administration of justice? So I think these are very alarming concerns, and the Judicial Services Commission and even the present Minister of Justice needs to make a statement in this regard to ensure to the general public that there will not be a fall in the administration of justice in this country, and the independence of the judiciary will always be safeguarded.
And Lihini, what do you say to the people who would then counter what you're saying by saying that the people will repose their hopes and their aspirations in the very judges and those officers to which this onerous obligation has been given, and that they will stand up with their spines intact and say, no, we will act according to not only our conscience, but according to the law and the Constitution of the Republic of Sri Lanka?
Yeah, so as you said very rightly, the judges must ensure that they safeguard the constitutionality, the Constitution, and they abide by the Constitution and interpret the law accordingly. And that law is not interpreted to according to the whims and fancies of one party or to favor another party, because the true administration of justice is maintained if the independence of this judiciary is maintained. So I think it is clearly important that the judges in this country are that nobody interferes in the administration of the justice. So this is, I think there was a serious discussion on this in Parliament, and also there were statements issued by even SJB Honorable Sajid Premadasa, and I think Aruna Kumara Dissanayake also made a statement in this regard. So I think these are very alarming factors, and these are factors that never has happened in this country previously. And why is the present administration resorting to these kind of measures are really concerns. They need to address these concerns, and if there are issues, they need to fix it. The issue is not about controlling the judiciary or dictating terms on how the judges should be giving judgments. Instead, what the government should resort is to correcting their mistakes. But we see the reversal. All what they want is to control the general public and to suppress people's right, freedom of speech, and suppress people's rights of protest, which is a failure. If this happens, it's a failure in democracy.
But we also had a judge recently who gave an order saying that the people's rights and the right to movement, the expression of the freedom to say what you want, and all those rights guaranteed by the Constitution could not be overridden by the quarantine law. Was that a welcome decision?
Yes, a judge had made a statement saying that that people's freedom of speech should not be suppressed. I think recently in Colombo, if one of the judges in Colombo had given this judgment, I think that is, what we know from the true administration of justice is that a judge has the right to interpret the law. So that is what that judge has done. So I mean, any judge should have the freedom to do it, and we don't think that no party, no government official, the executive, nor the legislature should interfere into these actions of the judge.
And moving on, do you consciously believe that Sri Lanka is moving towards a authoritarian system of governance?
My personal opinion is yes, because if you presently see how the pandemic is being controlled, how it is being managed, it is done according to the total discretion, I would say, total decision of one person who we call the president. And we see the president himself is also not taking the opinion of professionals in this country, or neither the virologists or the professionals in this country. He's not seeking their opinion. It's president and the military who is working together in controlling this pandemic. we like to ask the question, where are the professionals, where are these individuals in Vietmaga who came forward and who are sitting in parliament? And what about all these doctors who are expressing their opinion and in lockdown in the country? So we see so many parties, so many people coming and making requests to the president to consider saying this is a grave situation of the country. People are giving their opinion, but we don't see the president listening to any of these things, but he is taking decisions based on his consciousness, but towards the detriment, it's resulting towards the detriment of the country. So yes, it is somewhat of militarization, because what we see is the military getting involved in every neck and corner of this country, which is also which will in the end result towards failing of the governmental system. What a president and the administration should do is to make sure that the system runs. The system should take precedence, and people like the military should only be supporting functions. But here what we see is the military taking precedence together with the president. Yes, so these are signs of militarization in the country.
And we're moving towards the concern. There's a growing call now for the government to enter into some form of lockdown of some sorts. There's a growing call. The 10 members of parties that have been aligned to this government have also put their signatures pen to paper, and they too have called for at least a lockdown immediately to get our grip back on the rising numbers. Couple that with what Dr. Manoj Veerasinghe said yesterday, that the actual figures are likely to be 3 times more than what the government is trotting out every day. What are your thoughts on this, Lihini?
So, now, if you look at the present COVID situation, the pandemic situation in the country and the death rates, it's actually in a very sad situation. Today I saw some report, previous 2 days ago it was Malaysia, Iran, and then Sri Lanka. But now Sri Lanka has topped the death rate. So our COVID pandemic spread is quite high, and we see that the government officials and also the medical staff coming forward and saying that they are unable to control this pandemic. Yesterday there was a report to say that the National Hospital, about 300 of the medical staff has been infected. And there was a random PCR test that was done in an area called Paduka. Out of 121, about 120 was positive. And we see outside the National Hospital people coming with bodies, with boxes, with coffins tied up into 3-wheelers. So and we see people, patients lying in hospitals. People are unable to get beds, no hospital beds. So these are all signs that the pandemic is out of control, that Sri Lankan government has failed to manage this situation. And we see, and also there, as of yesterday, 32 cities of the country had gone down to lockdown. They themselves, the businessmen of those cities have discussed, and they have locked down the cities, and they have come to a consensus that they are not going to operate. It is not because that they are economically not affected, but they are concerned about their lives and that they want to live. So I think Sri Lanka needs to handle this situation very carefully. The government, we just can't understand why the government don't want to lock down the country when there are so many requests by the medical professionals repeatedly coming and saying that the spread is quite high, that if it is not controlled, the death rates can even go up to mind-boggling numbers. So I think the president needs to consider all these things seriously and handle the situation. So if they don't want to go for a lockdown is because they cannot handle, because of the economic situation, is because of these daily wage earners, the government needs to come up with a mechanism on how they are going to at least feed the people, at least for the next two weeks. These are not new problems for us. These problems, now we have been battling with this pandemic for the last 2 years. Sri Lanka could have gone in for a proper social security mechanism. There doesn't seem to be a strategy in ruling. It is, what we can say is, it's somewhat like shooting off the hip. Where is the plan? Where is the strategy? It can't be haphazard. It can't be waking up in the morning and deciding what we are going to do. Our country is in a serious situation, and the leaders leaders in these positions must look at this not in their interest, but in the interest of the people. What I always say is that a president in a country is only a temporary custodian. He is appointed for a period of 5 years by the people. He is appointed by the people to do the best for the people, not for himself or for his family or for his cronies or to the people around them. This is the problem with our leaders. We like to ask, where is their intention to govern? Are they sincere to the people of this country? Are they sincere to the people that voted for them? So to be honest, Sri Lanka is in a very sad situation, and I don't think even the 6.9 million voters who voted for this present administration ever expected a situation like this. And I think, irrespective of party differences, everybody must come together to control this situation and take Sri Lanka out of this misery, I would say.
Sri Lanka lives matter. Let's find out what more we, the people, can do after the short break when we look at the headlines from this evening's primetime news from News First.
News First, Newsline with Faraz, Shauketaly.
And welcome back to Newsline Zoom. We're in conversation today with Attorney-at-Law, member of the Municipal Council from Moratuwa, none other than Ms. Lihini Fernando. Ms. Fernando, can I ask you this question? We get reports from all over the country that various businesses are making their own personal decisions and shutting up shop in an attempt to stop the spread of the virus. What does this mean to you?
What it means for us is that the people have decided to take their decisions because they are more concerned about themselves, their families. They want to live, per se. And also for people to take these measures, instead of the government giving the directive, we have to ask the question, do we actually have a government in this country? It is the government who should be giving the directive and telling the people that we are going in for a lockdown. We saw recently that New Zealand President Jacinda Ardern with one patient going in for a lockdown. I'm not saying that we should, we need to go by that, but we are in a grave situation for us. The spread is quite high in this country. And if people are realizing the gravity of this, why can't the government realize the same thing? And we have repeatedly seen that the virologists, the doctors, the GMOA, people like Professor Malik Piris, everybody coming forward and appealing to the government that they need to close down the country to control the spread of the pandemic. The more it is open, the more people get about, the more people move around with their day-to-day operations, the spread is going to be quite high. If you actually take today main cities, at least if you take the main cities, if you take each road, you can at least find one family who is infected by this pandemic. So it is quite a grave situation. So it is actually a sad situation that people are resorting to for a lockdown measure and that the government is not seeing the importance of it. So what we have to say is that in this present government, even in the cabinet, as well as there are 4 doctors who are in this government. Even at least if the government doesn't want to listen to the professionals, they need to at least try and listen to their own people. But it is not happening. We like to ask this president, when he came to power, he was talking of a scientific way of governing the country. Where is the scientific way of governing a country? This is not a scientific mechanism of running a country. This is actually playing with the lives of the people. In other words, are they contributing towards manslaughter? That these are questions that the people need to ask, because at the end of the day, people's lives are important and we all must get through this pandemic. It's not about controlling the pandemic and going forward. We must somehow get through this pandemic and we must resort to a mechanism where we can revive our economy back and bring Sri Lanka back to functioning. It is what they are trying to do is they are using the military to control, not the military to control, the military to use of force, not to curb the pandemic and not to eradicate this pandemic.
But whilst I hear what you say, what about the government stance that really, if they go for a lockdown, they are concerned about the approximately 8 million people who make their living on a daily wage.
Yeah, we understand that that issue, Faraz. My concern is that this is not a new situation. We have been battling with this pandemic for the past 2 years, and we knew that there are daily wage earners. There are people who earn their living on a day-to-day basis. So, where is the social security mechanism? Couldn't the government have resorted to having a proper social security mechanism? Through the today, through the Grama Niladhari divisions, through the Samurdhi officials, have they even identified that if they are to feed these people for 2 weeks, what is the what amount of finances that they require? Have they even identified these numbers? Then what are the mechanisms that the government has taken to ensure that the people are looked after? We don't see that the government being taking appropriate measures to understand this. Now, and we see that the government is investing on infrastructural projects. Recently, we saw the Prime Minister going and saying that they are launching a project to beautify 200 cities in the country. So we see that they are investing on infrastructural development projects. But here we must first of all look after our people and make sure that the people of this country are surviving prior to engaging in that. What is the core and what is the important at this point is the question which the opposition keeps asking from the government repeatedly. And also I think Honorable Sajid Premadasa in Parliament raised these questions several times, but each time he raised these questions, the government, what they did was they resorted to ridiculing him versus considering what he had stated. He was one of the first people who came forward and said, that there was a pandemic that is coming in the country, and that time they ridiculed him. And then he asked about the vaccination program. And then we saw Minister Vasudevan Anakara coming and saying that we don't need vaccines at this point. And then they resorted to promoting Ayurvedic mechanism. And we were delayed in bringing the vaccines and giving it to the people. In the midst of it, we see the country being opened down, tourists coming. And even today, we see that Ukrainians are still coming to the country. So again, we like to ask, where is the strategy in governing a country? Where is the strategy in controlling the pandemic?
So Sri Lanka lives matter. No plan, no gain. Does that sort of sum it all up?
It is actually, we hope that the president will realize all these things soon and, resorted to measures. Maybe he should call a all-party conference, consult the opposition, consult all the concerned parties in this country and govern collectively, govern collaboratively, and come out of this pandemic, come out of the economic situation, the dire straits, come out of this situation and take Sri Lanka back on track. That is of paramount importance, and we hope that the president will resort to such measures.
And Lihini Fernando, do you think that these shops, these businesses that have closed down in various towns and cities around the country, would you ask them to reopen the shops, or would you ask them to carry on closing it at least for a 2-week period or whatever period that they decided? Which option would you go for?
So I think people in this country have resorted to taking their own decisions because they have lost confidence in the government. The government is not giving clear direction to the people. Because of that situation, the people have decided themselves to close down the shops because they want to protect their lives and their families. So going forward, I think it is time that the government gives, because we have a government in operation. So it's the government needs to give direction to the people, which is important. And I hope that the president, no sooner or later, acts as the custodian of this country and takes the right measures in the best interest of Sri Lanka.
Do you think that judging from the president and his ministers' immediate past behavior and actions, do you feel that there is room for them to change, or do you think that they are more likely to go on an obstinate path, just the way that Mr. Sajid Premadasa berreted them this morning?
So, looking at the conduct of the president up onto this point, the president has not acted in a manner that he is considering the opinions of other parties, or neither is he considering the opinions of professionals or the doctors. That is the approach that the president has taken up to this point. But we hope that he changes his approach, because there have been many requests, and even the Mahanayakas today have come forward and requested for a lockdown. So I think countries can't be ruled by being authoritative only, by acting like a dictator. A leader of a country should be able to listen to all parties, should have the open mind to consult the opinions of professionals. It is a collective way of governing. We're not in a dictatorial governance, we are in a democracy. So president must govern the country according to the democratic principles of the country. So hence, he ought to listen to all these people. He ought to listen to the president, to the officials, to the government officials. He ought to listen and govern collectively and not according to his own ways.
Lihini Fernando, thank you very much for being on Newsline Zoom. We really do appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And that was the way it was on Newsline Zoom. Take care, and as always, God bless you.